Houston, we have a problem. Let's play hardball. Good evening. I'm Chris Mathews in Washington. Let me begin tonight with this. Glee. It's a TV show. It's also what we're seeing happening on stage down in Houston tonight. We're looking at the triumph of gun power over the will of the people. 90% of the American people we know want better background checks on who buys a gun. They want a way to stop felons, the criminally insane, and wife beaters, if you will, from getting more firepower. Well, forget about all that. The National Rifle Association is now engaged in some same politics marriage with the Republican National Committee. Wayne LaPierre loves Reince Priebus, and Reince Priebus loves Wayne LaPierre. And together, those two joy boys of the gun world have put the kibosh on anyone that threatens their deal. Well, tonight, we look at the celebration down in Houston tonight of the marriage between lethal hardware and the hard right. And yes, Houston, we do have a problem. Joy Reid is managing editor of the Griot, and Ed Rendell, of course, was former governor of Pennsylvania, or he is former governor of Pennsylvania. Anyway, the NRA convention taking place this weekend in Houston shows just how far right the far right has gone. The once independent and once bipartisan group known as the NRA has gone so far right. Look at the speakers list. It's almost exclusively composed of hard right figures. People like Sarah Palin, Ted Cruz, Rick Perry, Rick Santorum, Ted Nugent, and of course, the inimitable Glenn Beck. Well, it looks like the roster from a CPAC convention. In fact, it's the same list. Well, this afternoon, Ted Cruz, took an end zone dance, if you will, for helping to defeat the background checks bill in the Senate. Let's watch his dance.
A month ago, you had the president holding, it seemed, press conference after press conference after press conference, and his package of legislation that would have undermined the Second Amendment in Washington looked like an unstoppable freight train. Well, I'll tell you, I was proud to join with my friends, Senator Rand Paul and Senator Mike Lee, in writing a short and simple letter to Harry Reid that said, we will filibuster any legislation that undermines the Bill of Rights or the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Because each of you spoke out, and because millions of Americans spoke out 2 weeks ago when the proposals came to a vote, every vote that would have undermined the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms was voted down.
Well, he was engaged in that one-man kissing booth. Former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum also celebrated the bill's defeat. Let's watch him in action.
You stood up when freedom was under assault, and you stood in the gap, and you made a difference. You can point to what you just accomplished over these last few months, when the entire tide of the national media and the popular culture was trying to erode a fundamental freedom. You didn't let all of the smoke and mirrors of trying to hide behind a horrible tragedy deter you from the truth.
Governor, I think these guys are giving tribute as if they're talking about the boys at Pointe du Hoc who took the cliffs at Normandy. These are the guys who took the easiest vote in American political history. They backed the NRA. And yet it was almost a religious experience for these clowns. Your thoughts, Governor? I don't know. I guess there's been things on the center left and the left like that, but what a smooch contest that was.
Well, and it's particularly disturbing, Chris, because there's the undertone of not only defeating a bill that made abundant common sense to 90% of America, but more importantly, defeating President Obama. And that seems to be the main thrust here. We're not going to give the president a victory. We're going to defeat the president. We're going to defeat the president's attempt to take our guns. They lie to people. The bill, in fact, made a federal registry impossible because it made a creation of it a felony. It actually strengthened their position that there should be no federal registry, but they lied because they didn't want to give common sense a victory, and they didn't want to give President Obama a victory. And frankly, that's disgusting.
And that's right from Toomey. You were actually repeating what your colleague, I guess, from Pennsylvania, Mr. Toomey, has said on the record.
There's no question. And it's disgusting. This isn't about the president. It isn't about him winning or losing. It's about what's right for America. And what's wrong with Washington, D.C. is exactly what these guys are saying, Chris. And they're going to pay for it because people are getting fed up. And as I said when we talked about this earlier this week, the people who care about this issue are not going away this time.
A month ago, you had the president holding, it seemed, press conference after press conference after press conference, and his package of legislation that would have undermined the Second Amendment in Washington looked like an unstoppable freight train. Well, I'll tell you, I was proud to join with my friends, Senator Rand Paul and Senator Mike Lee, in writing a short and simple letter to Harry Reid that said, we will filibuster any legislation that undermines the Bill of Rights or the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Because each of you spoke out, and because millions of Americans spoke out 2 weeks ago when the proposals came to a vote, every vote that would have undermined the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms was voted down.
You stood up when freedom was under assault, and you stood in the gap, and you made a difference. You can point to what you just accomplished over these last few months, when the entire tide of the national media and the popular culture was trying to erode a fundamental freedom. You didn't let all of the smoke and mirrors of trying to hide behind a horrible tragedy deter you from the truth.